Hey guys, I wanted a cheap GoPro alternative to use for filming underwater while I was snorkeling on holiday. This is my review of the Yi Lite Action Camera, which I bought from Amazon at £90. The contents of the box are not really very interesting, so let's get straight on and have a look at the camera and talk a little bit about its specifications. It's a familiar looking little black box. I think it looks quite a lot like a GoPro, although I don't actually own a GoPro. I think the form factor is very similar. This is the rather fiddly cover over the micro USB charge and data transfer cable. It's quite fiddly to insert, and the little cover can sometimes foul the actual plug there. It's also a very short cable. I don't really understand why people give such short cables for things like this. In terms of data transfer, I found speeds to be excellent over USB 3, no problems at all. And you can see here that I'm sort of pushing 33 megabytes a second, which I'm pretty happy with. Large files transferred very quickly, no problems really. So that's important. Obviously, you don't want to be waiting 3 hours to download your latest video. Worked very well. Okay, the memory storage is micro SD, and it has to be class 10 or higher. Let me just give that lens a little polish. It's quite susceptible to fingerprints, especially annoying if you've got a fingerprint on it and then you put it in the case. Okay, the on and off button on the top, the 2-inch LCD screen on the back. It's got a standard screw fit for a tripod or camera mount, and inside this little cover here you can see the battery, and also in there is the micro SD card. It's got this little tab that enables you to pull the battery out. Obviously, imagine this is something you're not going to be doing a lot of. Personally, I just attach the cable and use the data transfer that way rather than removing the card, but you could do either, I guess. The camera videos at 4K at 20 FPS. It's got a wide-angle lens with a Sony 60 megapixel sensor. It can do Full HD 1080p at 60 FPS, which is what I use. It has a 2-inch LCD Gorilla Glass touchscreen, and in its waterproof case, which I'll show you in a minute, it's supposedly waterproof down to 40 meters, although obviously I didn't get anywhere near that with my snorkel gear on. It has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built in, supposedly a 130 minutes battery life, and I certainly didn't notice any issues with that. And importantly, and the reason why I went for this particular GoPro clone, is because it has electronic image stabilization at a relatively low price. I really wanted the image stabilization to make my video less shaky. I'll show you some video samples at the end of this particular video, and you can see for yourself. I'm not going to show you through the entire menu system, but you can see that the little screen at the back is touch sensitive. You can navigate your way through the different menus. Important to mention that the image stabilization by default was switched off when I got my camera, and actually took a couple of dives of footage without realizing. And you can see that obviously the menu system is fairly easy to navigate. Another interesting point here is this camera is supposedly 4K at 20 FPS. On the box it actually says 4K at 15 FPS, but I guess there's been a firmware update which has probably improved that, and I recently updated the firmware on this. Maybe the reason why mine shows 20 FPS rather than 15. It does have a stills camera. Obviously it can take 16 megapixel images. It's a fixed focus lens, it's a wide angle lens. Personally, I wouldn't use this as a stills camera unless you're kind of in a bind or you're underwater and you want to take a quick snap. I don't think this is a substitute for a stills camera, and probably something you're going to take along like I did. You know, if you're going to go on and do some rough stuff, you know, go underwater, you don't want to take your good stills camera somewhere, then this is a reasonable alternative. But I don't think you're going to be taking your wedding photos with a still camera on this particular video camera. Okay, one of the key things that this camera comes with is its waterproof case. And as it says on the box, it's supposedly waterproof to 40 meters. Here it is. It's made of a sort of tough plastic, and it has a standard mount on the back. The whole of the rear part hinges off. You push across this little button. It's a little bit fiddly, not too bad. The top lever's off, the hinge bracket, the back lever's out and the camera just drops in. Now I've used this extensively while I was on holiday, almost every day for 10 days, snorkeling, obviously not down to sort of the kind of depths that it claims to be able to withstand, but I had absolutely no problems whatsoever with any kind of leakage or anything like that. It's got a rubber seal around on the outside and it worked perfectly. The camera was bone dry the whole time and I never had any issues. It comes with this mount which you can use to mount onto a standard tripod. So what we'll do is we'll have a quick look at some mounting options now, because I think that's probably also important for people. We tried a number of different mounting options. Tried putting it on this kind of portable stand using the screw fitting. Obviously it works okay if you want to put your camera in a static position, and I like these flexible leg things because they can grab stuff. The camera is pretty light, so it's pretty stable on the stand that we've got here. These are kind of generic stands that you can buy on eBay and Amazon without any problems. This doesn't obviously work very well when you're diving, though it goes without saying. So when we were diving, we used this, had a buoyant handhold sort of grip. So the advantage of this is that obviously you can hold it easier than the camera itself, so you've got it on a little handle. And also the advantage being that if you let go of it or drop it for some reason, it floats to the surface and you don't lose your camera, or it doesn't sink to the bottom of the murky depths. That was probably the most common thing we used while we were diving to use a camera. The final option that we did try, but I didn't think was so successful, was that some of our snorkel masks, like this one here, had a camera mount which you could install on the top of the head of the snorkel mask. The problem we found with this actually is that although the camera follows your line of sight, you don't naturally move your head in a way that necessarily makes for smooth video footage. So we didn't really find that this mount was particularly successful, so after using it once we went back to using the hand mount, the buoyant mount that I showed you earlier. But it does fit on, and this may suit some people better. Here's a handy hint for you. Okay, you have to rely on the sounds. That's the on sound, because obviously you won't always be able to see the flashing light in full sunlight. That's the I've started taking video sound. That's I've finished taking video. And that's the I've switched off sound. Yeah, if you buy one of these, you'll realise why that's handy to know. Let's do a fairly non-scientific look at how wide angle the lens is. So if I switch the camera on the tripod, you can see all of the table, including all the crap that I have strewn around. And if I cut in the original picture that I was using the Sony camera I used to record these videos, you can see that the Sony camera has a much narrower field of view compared to the large screen camera, which is the Yi Lite. So you can see that it's a relatively wide angle view. Here's some footage of a beach I was on recently, and you can see it's quite a wide angle view, which is nice when you're you want a sort of point of view camera. You know, if it's you walking around, you swimming around, then it gives you a kind of wide field of view. Here's some underwater footage that you can see. The quality is quite good, but what I learnt, and I think something I thought was really worth sharing with people about underwater footage, is that sort of blue haze that you can see all around is actually a common phenomena for underwater filming, and it can be removed with post-processing. Now, I've never really done much post-processing of video, but here you can see I've done some color correction on the video, and to my eyes anyway, the quality of this seems much better and much more natural, and the colors seem much more vivid. So handy hint, you know, if you take some underwater footage and you'd like to get rid of the blue haze, and get some software and do some color correction on it, and it'll look much nicer in my view. So let's have a quick look at a website for the Yi Lite Action Camera and see what kind of software support and support generally there is. It's actually a rather good website with a lot of detail. I didn't realize the camera actually comes in 3 colors, and when you dig further into the detail for firmware updates, there seem to be regular firmware updates and kind of active support by the company, which is very important and not always the case, especially with some of the cheaper camera choices. You need to be careful not to purchase a camera which doesn't have good support from the manufacturer. This one does appear to, and I have already done 2 firmware updates myself, and I've only owned the camera less than 6 months. So yeah, I think ticking the box for this one. It looks excellent. Okay, let's sum up with some pluses and minuses. Now, I'm not really in a great position to compare this with other similar cameras on the market. I've only bought this one. But overall, I'm very pleased with what it does, and it certainly meets all of my requirements. The main and first most important one being price. I mean, this is at £90. I think probably about a third of the price of the equivalent GoPro. No problem at all with the build quality. It does full HD 1080p at 60 FPS, which is great for me. It will do 4K, although I think at 20 FPS it's probably a little bit of a slow frame rate for that. If you're interested in filming at 4K, you probably want to upgrade. Obviously a Sony sensor is a good thing. I like the LCD, I like the Gorilla Glass, I like the build quality. I haven't tested the 40-meter waterproof, but certainly I've had no problems at all with the waterproof enclosure. It's been very robust. Mine has seen some action and has shown no signs of suffering any damage or water ingress. I haven't used the mobile apps and mobile facilities that you can use to connecting it to your mobile phone and other things, but I know those functions are there, and I like the manufacturer's support. The image stabilization does make a difference, and I'm happy with the image quality, and I like the wide-angle lens format. I think for the type of camera that it's good. The underwater footage that I've shown you, I'm very pleased with, and I think the main limitation really is the competency of the cameraman rather than how well the camera can film. And the universal mount and the different options for mounting seem to me to be, a really good outcome. On the negative side, the on and off switch through the case is a bit fiddly, and it's sometimes difficult to know whether you've switched the camera on or off. By default, the image stabilization is off, and the image stabilization is not as good as my Sony camera, although my Sony camera was 10 times the price. The data cable and charge cable is fiddly to connect and very short. Seems to me a little bit of an unnecessarily bad design decision there. I don't really understand. And it's never going to replace a good stills camera. If you want to take stills, then I suggest that you take your stills camera. This is really a +1 camera for the risky stuff, going underwater, action type filming. It's not for taking proper still shots of your family or holiday, I would say. But overall, I would definitely recommend. It's been excellent for us and continues to work very well, and I'm very happy with it. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.